Welcome to the Close the Chapter podcast. I am Kristen Boyce, a licensed marriage and family therapist with a private practice, Pathways to Healing Counseling. Through conversations, education, strategies, and shared stories, we will be closing the chapter on all the thoughts, feelings, people, and circumstances that don't serve you anymore and open the door to possibilities and the real you. You won't want to miss an episode, so be sure to subscribe. Welcome to this week's Close the Chapter podcast. It is so hard to believe that the year is almost over. Where did the time go? I feel like it flew by. How are you feeling? Do you feel like this year went by so incredibly fast? You are not alone. There are so many important topics that we didn't even get to cover this year that I hope to cover in 2024, next year, or you might be listening to this in a different year. And I hope I can continue to take a deep dive into important topics on emotional well-being. We don't talk about it enough. I want to teach it to all ages because the earlier we can get this information, the better off we're going to be in terms of handling pain, shame, fear, grief, loss, anxiety, and trauma, because we can't prevent it. We can just face it because the more we feel, the more we heal. So in today's episode, I thought it would be really important to talk about our need to fix our own pain and other people's pain. We want to rescue them from something bad happening, them feeling sad, or any kind of emotional distress. We get uncomfortable with that, or a loved one, maybe it's your kid, grandkid, maybe it's your friend, maybe it's your spouse, your loved ones. You don't want them to feel upset. And so we try to rescue people out of their pain when in all honesty, what they need the very most is your loving presence, your ability to tolerate their emotions, and your willingness to sit with them in it. Not offering advice, not trying to solve it, not trying to control it or fix it or rescue them out of it. Because pain is hard to hear, trauma is hard to hear, loss, because it can activate our own emotions. The more you can be with your own emotions, the more powerful you're going to be in your life and in your family and in your romantic relationships. This is one of the greatest gifts you can offer yourself and others. So sit down, grab your notebook if you want, or if you're walking, doing laundry, maybe you're driving, maybe you're trying to get some work done. Hopefully we can offer you some helpful pieces to break this pattern. So when someone starts to open up, be vulnerable, share with you authentically, you can say, it's okay not to be okay. I had a client say that, a dear client who's done some incredible work. And if you're listening, you know who you are. A lot of my clients have done incredible work, and you'll hear me just shout them out in various ways because I couldn't be more proud to witness their progress and just them becoming who they are. I wouldn't even say progress. I would say them evolving and healing the pain of the past. They said that they were listening to somebody and they said, it's okay not to be okay. And that person texted this person that said that and said that she'll never forget it. What a gift that you can tell people you don't have to have it all together. You don't have to say just the right thing. You don't have to hold back, repress, suppress, push down how you feel, that you welcome the emotions. When people say, I'm so sorry, I'm crying, I'm like, no, please let it out. You don't need to apologize. That's actually healing because you're letting the feelings out. Now, I've had people on the podcast that say that could be also a defense mechanism. And I believe if you have suppressed and repressed a lot of what you feel and you are crying, I believe truly that it's progress because you're no longer willing to have your body take that repression, because that's what makes us sick. Secrets, repression, they literally physically make us sick. I had another case where their child had some medical issues. And I said, please ask their child, is there anything that they have not shared emotionally? Are they moving away from any feelings? Is there anything they've pushed down, repressed, suppressed that could be living in their body? And they may or may not tell you, but this is a question for you. Is there anything you have kind of adaptively, and then it becomes maladaptive, moved away from by keeping yourself busy. Maybe you've been eating your feelings, shopping. Maybe you've been drinking too much wine. Maybe you've been working a whole lot. Maybe you just have to busy yourself with a lot of projects around the house. So you're pushing down what you feel. Maybe you're on social media a lot or gambling, or maybe you're into pornography. And this is not to shame anybody because everybody has things they do to move away. So please know that. This is not about being perfect. This is about just looking at what are you pushing down into your body? What are you not feeling? And breaking the pattern of trying to fix it. We can't do that unless you're willing to sit with your own discomfort of your emotions. And it might look like you are involved in a whole lot of caretaking. So maybe you're over volunteering. You don't say no to things when it's a heck. Unless it's a heck yes, I'm a no now at this point because I've learned that it takes a toll away from the things that matter most to me. Not to say volunteering isn't bad. It's wonderful. It's are you moving away from something? And sometimes it's one of the best things you can do is to help someone else. And maybe that's your stretch. Are you doing things codependently to be needed, to be wanted, to be desired? And that becomes your focus. Pleasing other people. Maybe perfectionism. And this is always to move away from those core emotions of fear, sadness, disgust, anger. Maybe you're trying to not feel those things. And maybe it's even joy you're pushing down or pushing away from because trauma splits us off from our authentic self. It splits off parts of us. And once we can start feeling, we can start healing. And I know that sounds, I've said it multiple times on the podcast. But until you start feeling your feelings, you're not going to be able to hold space and not want to fix it or rescue someone out of their own pain or to try to tell them what to do or solve their problem. Like if you only would go to therapy, if you'd only go to this 12-step program, if you would only do XYZ, you're trying to solve it. You're trying to fix this person, quote unquote, fix. I don't believe anyone needs fixing. I believe people need freeing from the pain, the trauma, their past, the shame that binds them up. And so these are foundational things I'm teaching in order to be able to hold space for another person who's in pain, who's in shame, who's in grief, that you can feel comfortable enough saying, your pain is welcome here. You can't fix it. You can't make it go away. You can just say, hey, I'm here to process. And that is the greatest gift you can give yourself and another person, giving yourself permission to feel, giving yourself permission to take up space. And so I kind of broke this episode into two parts in order to stop fixing, stop controlling. As you're trying to work on something, prevent something bad from happening. Here's the truth. I can't control what happens from 1 minute from now. It goes back to that whole concept of accepting the as is. So I broke it out into two parts. One is what needs to happen within yourself, or what's the invitation for yourself. And the second part is how do you do this for another person? Because we have to first start with ourselves, and then we can offer this to another person. So let's start with ourselves. I've already highlighted several pieces. Let's continue. Okay, recognize your own fear and discomfort. And so let me give you an example. I'm really big on examples, and there's millions of them, but I'm going to give you one in my own life because I think that makes it more relatable. And you know that we all struggle with holding space and not fixing. So my daughter came to me. There's always stuff with lunches. If you remember back in middle and high school, it happens all the time with friendships. Somehow you get left out or feel left out, or teenagers sometimes inadvertently or directly do or say things that are hurtful. So my daughter was talking about the lunch table and how two of the people at the lunch table end up kind of talking to each other and turning their backs on her. I don't think it's intentional. And then she ends up with this other person who's very nice. She just feels sad that she's not included in these other conversations. So these other two people get up, go to the locker, basically leave her. And they're like, we're going to this person's locker and we're going to that person's locker. See you later. And there's been more things that have happened that have been extremely hurtful. Whether she thought she was rooming with these people and then come to find out when she's like, oh, how are we rooming together? They're like, they replaced her with somebody else. So these are things that happen in high school. And so she was telling me about it. And what did I want to do? I wanted to get my mama bear things on. I wanted to call the parents up. I'm just going to be honest. This is what I wanted. I'm not doing any of this, but I want to be real about when someone's in pain. And a lot of times if your kids are in pain, we want so much to protect them from pain. Well, we can't. So I don't call the parent up, of course, because what are they going to do? I mean, they could do something, but the point is, that's not the point of this exercise. I had to take a deep breath, and the first thing out of my mouth was, well, have you talked to them about this? Because you could tell them how you feel. And before I could even finish, I knew that I was advice giving. I was trying to solve it. I was trying to fix it. And she said, because I empower my kids to tell me the truth all the time and question anything, she said, you're trying to fix it. And I just need you to listen, and that's all, and offer empathy. I don't need you to fix it. And I was like, good for you for saying that. Good for you for interrupting me, because I want to empower them to speak up, say how they really feel. And I said, thank you so much. Can we do a redo? And then I was able to come back to center. I was able to listen, self-regulate, not try to fix, save, or rescue, offer advice, problem solve it, any of those things, because that's not what she needed. She knows what she could do. She knows her options. She is very emotionally intelligent, and so is still growing, of course. So I was able to take a step back, and that's not always the case, especially with couples. It's not always the case because people can get really defensive. So the first thing I had to do was kind of take a deep breath and watch my defensiveness, which I didn't feel as defensive because I felt grateful that she could tell me that she didn't want the advice. I was like, we're problem solving it. I thought, thank you so much. So in other cases, I do get defensive, and I have to watch it because it's so hard, especially when we don't feel like what the other person's saying is on target, or maybe I experience something differently and they're saying it differently. But in this case, I was able to come back to center, take a deep breath, and then I really offered empathy. I said, that is so hard. And I could see how you feel really sad about that because you really want to connect with them and hear what they have to say and build relationships. So that makes so much sense to me that you feel that way. And I could just see her body relax and feel safe and feel seen and heard and understood. So this is a good example of when we want to jump in and offer problem-solving options, and we think we're being helpful. And I believe our intention is to be helpful. And 99.9% of the time, people just want to be heard first. They want to be heard. They want to be understood. And so I didn't mirror it back because in our family, they've said, don't mirror me because they feel heard already. What helps them feel even more heard is that I'm able to acknowledge the pain and offer empathy as a result. So what I did is I empathized with the emotion. I said, that really sounds sad and hard. And that makes sense to me how you feel because you really want to connect with them. And I use the word because. That's a nice reminder that when you offer empathy, it's nice to say, that makes sense to me because, and offer the reason why it makes sense to you. Not your interpretation, mainly why that emotion that they're having or the pain that they're having makes sense in your mind. So I had to recognize my own fear of, oh my gosh, she's not going to have a best friend, and which is all not true, but the fear of her feeling sad and lonely. And she said, it's really not that big of a deal, Mom, because I'm okay. I'm okay. If friends aren't going to treat me that way, then maybe I don't want to be close friends with them. She came up with this all on her own. And I thought, well, good for you, girl. You're noticing what you like and what you don't like in a friend. And that's okay. And to give her full permission to rumble with those things. What works for you? What doesn't? How do you feel when you're around certain people? And if you consistently don't feel good, then those might not be the best people to be around. And I just could see the integration of her ability to sit with her feelings, process through them, talk about them out loud, have them empathically witnessed is the most transformative thing you can do with someone in pain. Having an empathic witness that's non-judgmental and compassionate. It doesn't mean you agree with their pain. It just means you understand that that could be hurtful to them. So I had to rumble through my own fears and discomfort of her feeling sad and be like, that's really helpful that she's processing her sadness. I don't need to rescue her from that. That's a human emotion that we all have regularly, and it comes and goes. And have it to come up and out of your body is so important. You're not projecting that onto somebody else. You're not taking it out on somebody else. You're feeling your feelings and you're working through them. The next thing is within yourself, befriend the discomfort. Befriend that you can't fix it for somebody else. Sit with that feeling that you can't fix someone else's loss, pain, grief, shame. We want to, though. We think we can. I can't fix it. And I hate that word fix it anyways, but I can't rescue someone from that. I can be an empathic witness to that pain. That's what I'm really hoping to continue to help myself and everybody else with, because it would change the world. We don't need more judgment. We need more empathic witnesses. And then we can move through the pain. If you've ever had a child skin their knee, or maybe they got their feelings hurt at school, or you've seen this before, you have had this happen. And someone says, they're offering the pain. Oh, honey, come here, let me hug you. I'm not fixing it. Now, I might have to put Neosporin on it or clean it out, put a Band-Aid on it, but I'm nurturing it by empathically witnessing and holding space. And then they move on. It's like, oh, thank you, that's what I needed, and I move on. What if we could offer that to ourselves and our children and our partners? I'm telling you, it would change the world. So if your partner comes home, your spouse comes home, they've had a really bad day at work. And they're like, I had a horrible day. My boss is awful. They hate me, whatever. I'm sick of this job. I never get promoted, blah, 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 blah. And for you to go, oh, that is so hard. And I can imagine you feel not good enough because you're trying your hardest, you're putting all the effort in, and it doesn't seem to be paying off. However you want to frame it. But the point is, I'm holding the space, I'm empathic, because pain needs to be witnessed to be transformed. The other thing is, I think it's helpful to pause before moving forward. Take a pause by taking a deep breath. Create space before anything comes out of your mouth that you're going to try to problem solve, offer advice. Tell them what you've done in that situation. Tell them a story about you and how you've handled it, or your loss and how that helped you. Save that. You could say that maybe later, but at the front end, we're not going to do that. We're just going to hold the space. You're going to notice your body. Is your body having heart palpitations? Is this triggering something in you that needs to be addressed or looked at? Maybe it's triggering a memory for you of when you felt rejected by a person or a friend, based on my example, and you felt like you weren't good enough and pretty enough or personable enough, fun enough, whatever the thing is enough. Maybe you're over-identifying with the person's experiences, so then you want to share your story instead of holding the space. I have had to work on that because I want to go, me too. I've said that before, me too. And sometimes that can be very helpful. I would just caution to wait, and then after you've witnessed, after you've empathized, after you've really heard and understood them, then maybe you could say that, depending on where the person's at. Ask yourself, what is your intention? Are you wanting to tell this person all the ways they can solve the problem because that's how you think? Are you see a more efficient way that this person could do something? Are you seeing how you could make this whole thing go away if you would just talk to the person? Which all that might be true. That's not what we want to do on the front end. That is not step 1. You're already at step 5. We want step 1, which is listen, watch your body language and your facial expressions. So we don't want to have a judgmental face when we're listening to someone's pain. We don't want to act bored. We're going to listen to understand, and we're going to offer that empathy that we so crave as humans. So look at your intention, whether you're trying to solve a problem, fix it for them. And if you always jump in and fix someone else's problem and problem solve them for them, they're never going to learn how to problem solve on their own. And I like asking questions. After you've heard, after you've listened and empathized, then you could ask other questions. And I think it's important for you to explore your own anxiety. And that kind of came back to my first part of looking at your own fear. Because oftentimes that fear will block you from the ability to be completely attuned to somebody else and present. And then we have to look at that a lot of times we're trying to prevent people from pain, shame, grief, loss, judgment, rejection, abandonment. We think we're going to protect them from that. And the truth of the matter is, I can't. And once we can rumble through the powerlessness that we feel, that's an important step to be able to stop trying to fix things for everybody else. Stop trying to caretake everybody else. Now, as parents, we have to do some degree of that. I'm not talking about that. But there's a point where we're going to overcompensate and rescue other people and rationalize and minimize, try to rescue them out of really doing that deeper work of connecting to emotions. And you're going to stunt their growth. You're going to stunt them emotionally. Part of what we're working on is helping people to feel safe enough to open up to us. It's up to them whether they want to do that work or not. So what are some of the key components when we are holding the space for the other person without fixing, without problem solving or advice giving? We're going to acknowledge their emotions. So we're going to reiterate some of this. We're going to offer empathy, and that makes sense because, and you're going to say the because. Ask if they want you just to listen and empathize, or they want advice or feedback or problem solving. Ask your kids, are you just wanting me to listen? Or I don't care if they're adults or they're teens or the little kids. Do you want me just to listen and offer empathy, or are you wanting me to give you advice, feedback, or problem solve? And then if they say, I just want you to listen, just listen. Don't just because, or let me offer you this, or I think you could do that. No, they're going to not open up to you. They're not going to share with you when you try to solve the problem, when you give them suggestions, when you give that person ways that they could handle the situation. They don't want that unless they ask for it. So you could ask if you're not clear. And then I think it's important to give people permission to let it all out emotionally. Meaning, if they're crying, we're going to let them cry. Say it's okay to cry. Please don't ever say stop crying to anybody, because what that does is it pushes it back down into the body and it prevents them from getting the healing and the relief that they need. So if someone's crying, I'm like, let it out. It's okay to cry. Let's create space for it. And then I'm quiet to let them cry. I'm right there with them. I'm shaking my head like, yeah, that's pain. Yeah, it's okay to let it out. It's okay to not be okay. And when we can start giving other people permission to feel, I'm going to tell you, there's an opening and an expansion that happens within yourself and that other person. And I encourage you to do that for yourself. So when you're crying, you're going to say, good for you, sweetheart. You're getting it out. And I know we're not like, yay, crying. Everybody says, I hate crying in front of people. I'm the same. I have had many episodes of crying, and it's the most cleansing thing I can do for myself. Now, the next day, oftentimes you'll feel exhausted. Your eyes might be swollen, and you might feel a little lighter that you got it out. You might feel a little lighter that you didn't bury it. And then you're giving those permission slips to yourself and other people. So we don't have to start drinking our feelings away. We don't have to take so many things, pills and whatever to make those feelings stop, because you can tolerate the feelings and you can tolerate them in other people, and you expand yourself in so many ways. So if you want help connecting more on your own emotions, grab the journal at Kristen D. Boyce, Kristen DBOICE.com/free resources, because I want this to be practical and I want you to feel like you can implement this. I invite you into a commitment of working on listening and offering empathy more this year. And I want you to do an experiment for me and tell me how your life changes. Listening to your own inner voice, listening to your own emotions, listening to your body. That gives you then that step one. Then you're going to be able to listen to other people in such a deeper capacity. And I would love to hear how this transforms your life and your relationships. And I know this sounds like I'm making this big. It is. We're not going to fix everybody's problems. We're not going to try to people please everybody in our lives, because you can't. Everybody's responsible for their own happiness. I'm not responsible for my kids' happiness. I'm not responsible for my husband's. He's not responsible for mine. My kids aren't responsible for mine. We're all in charge of our own happiness. So if people say, I just want you to be happy. Well, happiness comes and goes. It's not a sustainable emotion. It's not realistic. It's not even fair to say, I just want you to be happy, because we want that for all of us. We all want to be happy. We want our kids to be happy. But happiness is not an emotion that's there all the time, because life is constantly changing. I mean, we are changing 1 minute to the next. Our skin is changing. Our cellular makeup is changing. And what if we could just give people permission to feel? That's where the joy lives. If you've seen the movie Inside Out, she wanted to put all these emotions in a circle. Like, I don't want to feel sad. I don't want to feel afraid. I don't want to feel any other feelings but happiness, but joy. And it's not realistic, because you can't feel joy if you're numbing out all other feelings. It just won't happen. So get yourself the journal, start connecting to your emotions and where they live in your body. Start listening with deep empathy with other people and see how your life changes. Share this episode if you found it helpful, if maybe you want to be on a journey with someone else doing this work, and let me know how it goes. I am cheering you on and so proud of you that you are doing the work of connecting more emotionally, being more emotionally available, and not fixing, problem solving, advice giving, offering solutions up on that first step. So thank you for listening, and I can't wait to see you in the new year. Thank you so much for listening to the Close the Chapter podcast. My hope is that you took home some actionable steps along with motivation, inspiration, and hope for making sustainable change in your life. If you enjoyed this episode, click the subscribe button to be sure to get the updated episodes every week, and share with a friend or a family member. For more information about how to get connected, visit Kristen, Kristen, Boyce, BOICE.com. Thanks, and have a great day.